planning for relocation. Today's session is really about sharing experiences from across the region, what ministries are seeing on the ground, how those decisions are being made, where the gaps are, and what kind of technical and financial support is still needed. It's not going to be a very technical workshop. It's more intended as a practical peer learning discussion grounded in Pacific experience and the realities that ministries are dealing with. As you can see from the agenda, we'll be hearing from country perspectives, RMI, Solomon Islands and Tuvalu, but we've allowed plenty of time in there for discussion and Q&A. So to reinforce the idea of this peer-to-peer learning in Talanoa, please put your hand up to come in with a comment, a suggestion or a question, or indeed use the chat box there. We'll be keeping an eye on the chat, and we'll pull out those questions towards the end, and we'll ask our speakers and everybody from the audience to help us unpack them. So great to see already some inputs into the chat. Just a little bit about GBPN. As you know, the Climate Smart Education Systems Initiative that we're all a part of. GBPN is the implementing partner, so it's the Global Building Performance Network, one of the implementing partners. And it is an international NGO working across areas like resilient buildings, climate adaptation, policy reform, and sustainable construction. Our team is approximately 40 people spread around the globe, and it includes architects, engineers, policy specialists, and resilient practitioners. Under the SESI program, GBPN is supporting Save the Children and Ministries of Education with climate smart school infrastructure work across the Pacific. A big part of the approach is trying to bridge the gap between high-level policy discussions and the practical realities ministries are dealing with on the ground, particularly around school infrastructure planning, resilience and implementation challenges. And one of the ways we're doing that is through the Pacific Climate Schools Help Desk. I think there's a slide here. You can see the link up the top where you'll find it. And it's very much supposed to be a help desk for use by ministries across the Pacific. We've introduced it before, but just sharing it here again for your access. Please feel free at any time to put your questions or your requests for technical support in here. We're not a top-down advisory service. The idea is we can bring value often by connecting countries facing similar challenges, by sharing practical examples and tools, or help ministries access technical support or lessons learned elsewhere in the Pacific. So in some cases, that might be sharing templates or guidance materials, reviewing documents, or linking ministries with peers in other countries. A lot of the value comes from reducing duplication. We know many countries are facing similar infrastructure challenges, so it's about joining those dots. On the GBPN webpage, you'll find a dedicated Pacific site, which includes some guidance notes already. One of those guidance notes is on sea level rise, and I'll give you a quick look at that later on. But for now, to set the scene and get an appreciation of some of those challenges, we're joined by Natalie from the Republic of Marshall Islands, and we have a quick video that we think is really going to help. So if you can bear with me for a moment, I will attempt to switch over to that. And hopefully you can hear the sound as well. Please shout out if that's not working.
Chorrene lo munchuli nagar rene agar idogon tarrene agar kaini pujre agar idogon yalajen biribirian min longani ni marwal yumun bulur in way arwal kali lar kachum kabira ga ti wotala lo terrain gear jugura richugo ilo man kabunga example ka produce jadi yan nge wot ilo mancaran example chop kanu jine man we develop terere te lukun chudak man charre ala rekomend malo udah gini meja do ela wala berat ecce berat cilu kanu ji meja dana charrain cikal de wina
pelajarin ngan kagel menjuri cep jarwan menjuri dia jido nganar kalak karang buk lajarun nganar par krol do juru lo terin julo mencari
Umgoro juwe rel under doan rumah yolak ke rumah raya dan ilo yen kami yala belip ni milguni ibu jadi belip kami cuk kewajar kejarabal menjuli kan saat ponjol kewajar kami kejarabal kilo menjarau kan kelajar ko kejarabal lo iya kelajar itu aja yang boleh mencari itu ya.
Invai yen ka dalam marat terai yen ka alap tidur bilu nangan mi ka jata no pulu mena ta ikian tari jote no dula lale ter ala dula air kang iki yan aramo kota karyon kapiti amani pa yang agin am dal kun kaya ne ta
Bukan cara ko rainin di ganari dok yung pamanatan cara paling nadali chubulin ngan lalay jigir kejien corenin ko ta ilali ba ngi rakarwe chen kamagdi eni lok trip kamano cara paling repair minigin am kau de jala kam kaini cara baru begin ya we ini jadi kembali
Hopefully that's helped to paint a little bit of the picture of some of the challenges in RMI. I'll hand over to Dr. Natalie Nimmer, who's the Commissioner of Education. That's one example of one school, but she's going to be able to tell us about some of the other challenges at the institutional level. Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you so much, Tim, and thank you to those at Save the Children, especially John Lilo and others who have organized this webinar for us. We're really honored to be here with all of you, our development partners, and especially our fellow educational leaders from around the Pacific region. I also want to recognize some of the Marshall Islands educational leaders who are here with me. One of those that was in the video, our Associate Commissioner for Climate Change and Education, is here with us today, and that's John Zedkaya, and our Deputy Commissioner for Student Wellness is here with us today, and that's Junior Paul. And we've been trying our best to really look at the school level coastal risk here in the Marshall Islands. We have so many challenges facing us. I think most of you likely know that we're a coral atoll country, meaning that the highest point in the whole country is about 10 meters, but most of the islands are 3 meters and shorter. And one of the challenges that we face is that our islands are very spread apart. Some of them you can take an airplane to, and we have grass landing strips on these remote neighboring islands. Others are not reachable by airplane, so we take ships or boats, and sometimes an airplane to a boat and get there. So some are very difficult to get to. And so the assessments have been challenging, but we do have a national climate change adaptation plan. And within that plan, our Ministry of Education, Sports and Training is responsible for conducting these kind of facilities audits. And so it's front of mind. It's something that we're really hoping that SESI can help us with, and they have started helping us. Because we know that there are unsafe schools. Our Associate Commissioner for Facilities, who you saw in the video, Cassiano Jetnel, he has done just a very brief rating of our schools from unsafe to those that have concerns, and those that are safe. And we have 6 of our schools he has rated as unsafe, but there are many others that have concerns that are quite significant. But we lack consistent data on, are they unsafe because of something structurally, or are they unsafe because of coastal inundation or some other cause? We also lack the data around the severity of the structural issues and the tidal issues, if this is a coastal inundation problem, nor do we have great predictive data that can help us to understand the urgency of the issues. So for example, that school in Millie, we've known for a couple of years that they couldn't use it. And so the students have been in the churches. And honestly, until now, we didn't really know that it was a climate change related issue, but as we looked at the tides and looked at the historical coastline, you could see in that video how many of the trees had their roots exposed, and how much you could then tell by the root exposure how much of erosion there has been along their lagoon side. And so it takes effort to get out to these locations. And so we are really working on that because we know that they're facing flooding, erosion, and structural risks. But our fear, my fear, what keeps me up at night is wondering how many of these schools are getting so much worse in the time that it's taking us to charter the ships and mobilize the people that can go out and do these assessments. You can go to the next slide, please. So that's our number one challenge, is to understand the scale of it. And one thing that's difficult for us is it's hard to get the information from the school. If we had digital connectivity, for example, we could just send out a Google form. The head teachers or principals could fill in the form, upload some photos, and that would be that. But most of these neighboring islands, we have about we have 79 primary schools, and of those, about 66 of them are in these remote areas. Of those 66, the vast majority do not have electricity and certainly do not have internet. Some of them have limited cell phone access. And because of the lack of digital connectivity, it's really hard to be able to gather that information. Often, we're calling out maybe by radio or by phone, and if they're going to send us anything, it might be handwritten, or they might be able to take some kind of photo maybe on their phone, maybe if they have some limited solar to charge the phone, but not really be able to transmit it to us very well. Um, Sometimes the principals, we also find, might underreport the issue because, it's happened to them slowly and they don't maybe recognize how severe the issue is. They also might have reported it in the past and feel discouraged, and so they don't want to be seen as complaining. And they also might be just unsure how to measure the problem. Our teachers in our neighboring islands, about 52% of them haven't gone to post-secondary education, and certainly none of them have a degree in engineering. And so they don't really know how to frame the problem. Oh, can you go back one slide? Sorry, I wasn't quite finished with that one. Um, And sometimes the technical language that we're asking them or that our partners are asking can create a barrier. So they might know that the school is unsafe, but they might not know how to explain it. We did have one example recently where we were working with the International Organization for Migration, which is the primary development partner that works with us on response to disasters. And they were planning to improve one of our elementary schools to use it as an evacuation shelter. But when they got out to the island, they found that the school floods too much. And we said, okay, well, maybe instead of using the school, can you use a different facility? They said, well, there was no facility on that particular island that did not flood, so they couldn't build an evacuation shelter on that island. Well, you all know how islands work, right? If there's no evacuation shelter on that island, is it going to be safe for the people on that community to get into a boat and go to another island, right? So this poses a real challenge for us, that the school might be the safest place, but safest compared to what? And will our development partners invest in those kind of facilities if there's still risk associated. It's going to be safer than many homes, but not as safe to meet kind of international standards. So in those cases, what do we do? It's really, really hard. And I don't have good answers for this, but that's why I'm here today. I'm hoping maybe the development partners on the call with us, or maybe some of you in other countries might have some feedback in that area of what you do when there's an entire island and none of the facilities meet the threshold of safety. You can go to the next slide. So we have a real need for technical capacity building and also support. So you can see the photos on this one. This is the school at Lucanor. You can see at low tide, it's relatively dry, but at high tide, the bottom of the school was covered in water, and that was not obviously that way when the school was first built. And so the water kept washing out the sand, and by washing out the sand, then the weight of the building caused the floor to crack and start to collapse. Um, so we really need the technical, obviously this is a problem, right? That was a pretty obvious one that we could identify, but we have limited in-house expertise to assess the coastal risk, to know which island is going to have this happen next, and which of our schools is situated at the wrong angle or too close to the shoreline. On average, our islands are only about a third of a mile wide. That's about what, just maybe 2 kilometers wide. No, not 2 kilometers, sorry. A third of a mile is about less than a kilometer, maybe 3/4 of a kilometer wide. And so they're quite narrow. There's not a lot of inland place. 500 meters. Thank you, John, in the chat. So there's not a lot of place to move our schools. In this case, we just moved it inland from where this one is located. And we also have a need for technical support to help understand these risks and to identify appropriate responses. When is moving inland not enough? When do we need to build on stilts? And do local carpenters and local contractors have the skill set or the technical expertise to be able to build on stilts in a safe way? Those kinds of questions we're having. We also need data, and to have that data regularly updated, because what looks safe today might not be safe 6 months from now. We just heard today in our heads of department meeting, this is where like the Secretary of Health and Education and all the various heads come together, and they shared with us that we think that there's an El Nino coming. And what does that mean? How will that affect our coastal inundation? And that El Nino might be with us for a couple of years. It's possible. And what will that speed up our risk, or might it slow it down? And those are the questions we need help to interpret. I'm an educator. I like to think I'm kind of smart and can Google these things and use ChatGPT, but I'm not an engineer and I'm not an oceanographer. And so I need technical support to help inform our decisions moving forward. And we need it to be regularly updated. We also need practical school level support. systems level advice is really helpful for someone in my position or in Junior's position or John's position, but we also need the school level support for our principals. You saw in the photo, in the video, the head teacher is a relatively young guy. He's trying his best. He wants to keep those kids safe, but he certainly doesn't have the background to know about these engineering challenges, these wave patterns and things that are happening. And so he needs someone that can work with him at the school level, on the day-to-day level. Maybe it's okay on Monday, but gosh, what's going to happen on Tuesday or next month? And how can he respond quickly to those challenges? So those are some of the needs that we really have. You can go to the next slide, I think. So we have limited options, right? So the example that I showed you, you can see here in this photo, the roots, that's what I was talking about, where you can tell that obviously the coastline used to be much further out, and it just keeps eroding. You can see it on the edge of the school there. You can see where the water line comes up on a regular basis, literally twice a day at high tide, and you can see where it washed out the bottom of this quite mature tree. So this shows how the coastal risk can remain hidden until a site visit is possible. We knew that there was a problem. We knew that there was a safety issue, but we hadn't tied it to climate change in an explicit way until this site visit. And so it's really important that we can get out to the different schools. One thing we're looking at is maybe chartering a ship somehow, and just taking it it's going to take a couple of months, maybe even 3 months to get to every site, and it's probably going to cost at least $250,000 US to charter that ship to get us out to every place. And is that practical? But I don't know what else to do, because we need to know what's really happening, and we need people to visit the schools that have the technical expertise so that we can make a decision, right, on what to do and how to prioritize these schools. As of right now, we believe that we have at least 5 other schools that need to be urgently relocated. But relocating them inland or upward, that we're not really sure about. So the relocation planning is really difficult because there's no higher ground. We can't go up a mountain. And there's really no alternative safe structures. Even in this case, the kids were meeting in the churches, but when it rained, the rain just came into those structures. On the one church, they have no walls, right? So there's very limited infrastructure on these remote neighboring islands. So the one thing we absolutely must do are these school level assessments. We've got to have those done before we can really make decisions on the best way forward and how to prioritize these projects, because we can't do them all at one time. There are limited contractors in the Marshall Islands, and our maintenance staff is also quite limited. They're doing their best just to keep their head above water with our immediate safety needs. Here in the urban area, we can't keep sending them to neighboring islands because then they're gone for weeks at a time. So it's quite a challenge, but we're hopeful. We know that we have a future in our islands where our national policy is not to migrate out. Our national policy is to stay. And so we are adapting. We're doing what we need to do to make a safe community for our students, for our children, and for the future. So that's our approach to this kind of work. And you can go to the next slide. This, I think, might be the last. So now I'm just opening up for questions. If you have any for us, you can see the literal labor it takes. We don't have big, heavy equipment in these islands. They're beautiful, as you can also see. So any of you technical experts on the call, now you know what you'll be coming to visit. Maybe you'll volunteer to come and help us. But you can also see that we can really make a difference relatively quickly. This school only took a month to build once we had the materials and the team there mobilized. So we can make a difference. So thank you very much, and I'm open to your questions.
Wow. Thanks, Natalie. I mean, that's really great presentation. Fantastic to see the pictures and the video and hear your words to really paint that picture of the myriad of challenges that RMI is facing there in the education sector. I'm just having a look in the chat to see if there's any questions. I don't see any, but please jump in if someone has a burning question. The way we'll run this is we have another couple of speakers, and you're free to ask questions at the end of those presentations or at the end of the three country insights. We'll also have a group session then, so you can sit on it if you want. But I don't think there's any restrictions. You can turn your microphone on and jump in at any time. So we want to keep this as a very much a conversation. Does anyone have a question? Or perhaps I can just wait. No, Natalie. I mean, I understand you said there was another 5 schools that are, almost in a similar situation. Do you have a plan yet for how to get? You spoke about the challenges of getting the detailed information about the range of hazards that schools are facing. Do you have a plan in place to get a detailed assessment of those 5 schools? I'm really just thinking about the next step. It's such a large set of problems there, but is there a next step already in place?
Yeah, I think we have a couple of next steps, but as far as them being in place, that's, I guess, relative. We know that we need to send out our Associate Commissioner for Facilities. We need to send him out with a team, with an engineer from our Ministry of Public Works to go out to those places, but they're not all in the same place. So, each of these outer islands, if you were to fly to it, the way that the airline schedule works is you might be there for 1, maybe even 2 weeks. So we can't do them all on one trip. We kind of
Yeah.
need to spread this out over time because he has other responsibilities as well. This can't be his only work. So we will probably do them slowly over several months. And then more comprehensively, I know that our Associate Commissioner for Climate Change and Education, John Zedkaya, who's with us today, is working on an assessment type checklist or form to gather some types of photos and narrative or observations from non-specialists for the rest of our schools.
Yeah.
We're trying to work on doing some of that. But again, transportation, we had what we thought was a brilliant plan. The Ministry of Health was going to charter a ship and go to about 18 different atolls in about a 3-week period. And we were planning to ride along with them, but now that ship is having some mechanical problems. So John was actually supposed to be there right now, which is, I mean, I guess it's good that he can attend this webinar, but not good in the sense that he's not on that ship right now. So we're waiting for that ship to be repaired, or if the Ministry of Health can find a different ship. And that won't go to every island because there's only health dispensaries on about half of the islands where we have schools, but it will go to a significant chunk of them. So that's something that we're working on.
And I know that you've had conversations already with Leanne about, what the assessment gathering tools could look like. But, that's not a bad thing to put out there in this discussion. If others on the call are sitting on tools that they have used in a similar sort of process, please do feel free to put a link in or reach out directly to Natalie or Leanne at the help desk there, and share those tools. That's a big part of this. Good luck to John. Good luck to the ship being out of action is just you didn't even mention that as one of the challenges, but it does go to the complexity of the situation there.
Absolutely. It's never easy. But these are, these people are in their homes, right? People have lived on these islands for a couple thousand years. And we want to do everything we can to enable them to continue living on these islands. So anything we can do together as a regional team, we want to to gain your expertise. We want to see your tools. Whatever you can do to help us, we are definitely open to it. We need support. On this first one we did with our general fund dollars. All the labor you could see was our own staff and community members from that island. We didn't have any external people coming in. We didn't have any donor funding, and we did it all on our own for this first one, and just to see if we could do it. And we now know that we can. We have some expertise for this kind of a simple approach, but we know we need support to scale this up, because this one
Yeah.
school after a 2-year period is not fast enough. So
Yeah.
so we now have proof of concept. So if you're out there and you want to help us, we would love to have you come. It's beautiful. Look how beautiful it is. Yeah, you're gonna love it. And the kids are the cutest kids in the world. You can, if you zoom in, you can see how cute they are. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Yes. All right. So we've got your email in the chat there. If anyone is up for a working holiday to RMI and they have experience in this area, get in touch with Natalie. Natalie, you did mention tools. What we're doing at the help desk is collating a range of tools and forms, also standard designs for schools around the region. And producing some guidance notes. And this webinar, the topic has been somewhat stimulated by a guidance note that we've been working on, which can be found at this website, gbpn.org/Pacifics. I don't know if they're forward or backslashes. But if you go on there, there is a good practice note managing sea level rise and coastal flooding. And I mean, what I like about this guidance note, it puts some of the, it tries to outline a step-by-step approach, and that first step obviously is gathering a detailed picture of the schools, a school-by-school situation. The next step is classifying the schools based upon their exposure and circumstances. And the third step there explores the possible management options and practical responses. And I know Natalie was saying that those options are rather limited in RMI, but in different places in the Pacific, there is a range of options that are available, and the guidance note talks you through it. One thing I do like about the note is wherever possible, where it's talking about an option, it provides links to where that may have been done already in the Pacific. So there's a lot of hyperlinks in there. If it's talking about building a school up on stilts, there's likely a link in there, and you can click on that and it'll direct you to another web page where there's tools or case studies done by others that help illustrate where it may have been addressed before in the Pacific. So I think that's a useful part of that sort of peer learning. Yes, John.
Sorry, just to say that we had a hand up earlier. I think it's Peter. So maybe we'll ask Peter to come on and ask his question.
Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Liz, Dr. Natalie, for sharing. It's been a touching video, and the challenge is real. Just a question around the coastal defense with all our infrastructure that has been built. What has been your plan around coastal defense to reduce corrosion to our infrastructure? Has there been any plan in place?
Thank you for that, Peter. So questions around coastal defense and how we're combating coastal erosion. I know that the Marshall Islands, more broadly, not only education, but sort of across the nation, has been using some nature-based solutions. Like, for example, pandanus trees. We know that their root systems are sort of uniquely designed to be able to hold some of the coastline in place. And so there's been some planting along the coastline in places, but you can see from the trees that were there, like even their roots would have held it in place, but it's just too much in some places. So that's something we've got to work on. We don't really have mangrove forests on most of our atolls. I think only one atoll is rainy enough to sustain mangroves. And in our urban areas, both in our capital is called Majuro and our second urban area is Kwajalein. Both of them use seawalls. We have at Ibai, which is the main populated island in Kwajalein Atoll. We're currently finishing off a World Bank project to build a 50 million US dollars seawall. Um, when they were building it, we thought, in my mind, the thing was going to be tall, right? And I don't know what size of rocks I thought they were going to be, but I know that they took a ship from Australia to pick up the rocks in the United Arab Emirates from a quarry there. So in my mind, the rocks would be, each one of them would be the size of a house, but they were not. They were sort of normal boulders, and I was shocked. But I'm sure their engineers had very good reason for choosing those particular rocks, but it is only maybe, I think, 4 feet or so, 3 feet above water. And they were talking about some of these mechanisms could sort of buy us 20 years or 25 years, and others could buy us 50 years, and talking about how the cost of that goes up exponentially. And so it is really difficult. So far we have chosen to prioritize the urban areas for those large engineering projects, and use more nature-based solutions in some of the more rural areas. In fact, this year for our climate change week, which just ended maybe 3 weeks ago, our high school students had a debate, and the topic was whether to prioritize rural areas or urban areas for protection. And I think this is one of the heartbreaking choices that we have to make sometimes. You know, how do you say we're just going to ignore one of these areas? And if you're looking at urban versus rural, would the entire Marshall Islands be considered rural on the global stage? You know, so these are hard questions to have to grapple with. Sorry. Sorry, I feel emotional. It's really difficult to have these conversations. And I think our high school students are so brave and so smart that they were willing to dig in and do research and see what's happening around the world and have discussions, recognizing that none of the answers are good. None of these answers fully honor Marshallese culture and people and land. We want to protect everyone, but we know that there's not time and there's not resources to do that. So I think it's brave to have our students involved in those conversations, but I think adults also have to have those conversations too. It's really hard. um,
Mm.
I see another question in the chat. Is there any
What we
digital
might,
schooling platform?
Natalie, what we might do
Yep.
is come
Oh,
back to that at the end, because I
okay,
do.
great.
No, I mean it's a great question, but I think that might be relevant for all speakers. So we'll park that. Thanks, Richard, for putting that in the chat about digital schooling options. We have the slow onset sea level rise challenges, and quite evident there in RMI. But there is and that we need to plan for. But I recall an expression that Mike Tyson was fond of, and he's saying everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Our next speaker is Christopher Harvey Securi from the Solomon Islands Ministry of Education, and we're very grateful for Chris to join us, because we know that they're in the middle of a disaster response. Essentially, they've just been punched in the face from recent cyclone there, Cyclone Marleo. But Chris, it would be fantastic to hear from you and how the Ministry of Education and Human Resources Development there in Solomon Islands is thinking about addressing both the long-term challenges of sea level rise and coastal flooding, but then also at the same time trying to respond in real time to this recent natural disaster. So with that being said, Chris, really appreciate if you can share some of your insights with us. Thank you. Chris, I'm not hearing. First of all, I need to double check that you're still connected. John, do you know if Chris is still connected?
Let me. I'm not sure if you can see his name on the list, but I can see some colleagues from the Solomon Islands Ministry of Education, Colrin and Richard. If you can, you let us know if Chris is around.
John.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think I sent you an email a while ago. He didn't come to office since Monday, so I don't know where he is now.
Okay.
What we slides. Sorry. Looking at the slide here, which at least on the first page, I've called one of my colleagues who might like to just share, because he has been engaged on this project, so he might just run through Rush. Mr. Lore, if that's okay with you.
Tim, what do you think? Is Richard, is Laura there now?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can get Laura to speak on the slide.
Yeah, we don't have to follow the slides. It could just be nice to hear his personal reflections on how the response to especially where there's coastal flooding, has been involved, and how the Solomon Islands Ministry of Education has been able to respond, and what they're thinking for those schools that have been affected in terms of immediate recovery and longer term. Lorima, please, fantastic. Just a few words, if you could let us give us a bit of an update. I'm sure we all recall the hearing about the cyclone when it struck. So be great to if you could share with us what that's looking like at the ministry at the moment.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you, colleagues. Sorry for popping in unprepared. I think this one is meant for my boss to speak today, but it's okay. I'll try my best to reflect on what is being prepared. So I understand this is the slide currently shared, right?
Yeah, I have 3 or 4 slides here that I'll give you a sneak preview. It includes the update here on the impacts. But if you would like to,
thank you very much.
Yeah,
you just go to the first slide, and then probably I'll try my best to guide you guys through the slide. I might reflect more on the current response that is happening in Western and Chazal. So here in the information, there's a lot of what should you say? engagements that we have. So for this slide, just a quick overview on the current arrangement that MAID is sitting in. So with the NDC or the National Disaster Council, we in that space on behalf of MOD. The NDOC or NDOC, as you see on the screen, is National Disaster Committee. So in the national arrangement, we have so education is one of the, and for that we have the DS for the education services, DS Chris, who is actually chairing that committee, on behalf of MED. And then for that arrangement, we have a similar arrangement mirrored in the provincial level. So the NDC, we have the PDC, so it's the Provincial Disaster Council that sits in the provincial level, with which we have our officers, education officers on the ground, that sits in these two different sits in the council and in the committee. Yeah, so that's that, and then what we are currently working on with support from our partners and stakeholders is the school disaster committees, that we are establishing with support from NGOs and other partners that are working in the schools. So we have partners that supporting school developing plans and disaster response plans, climate resilience plans, and so forth. It's also a requirement to establish disaster in the schools. So these committees, they respond to disasters, and they also activate at different levels as alerts come through. So I think basically this is the arrangement that we have here in the Solomon Islands. Next slide, please. So MED, National Disaster Operations Committee. So I think most of you might have followed the tropical cyclone Maila in Western Indonesia. So for that, the education sector committee is also activated its emergency operation center. So the NDOC education comprises of different partners. So we have Save the Children, who are members of the NDOC education. We have UNICEF. We have development partners, DFAT, MFAT, who are members of this committee. So once activated, we congregate as when needed to discuss issues and plans for the response. So in the peacetime, these are some of the actions that we do. As you can see in the photo, it's helping schools develop plans, conduct trainings. So this one is done with the support from partners. So different organizations are conducting these activities in the schools. What MED is trying to do is to ensure that these approaches are uniform across all schools, so that we are speaking the same language. So we have most of these activities are aligned towards our NAP. We have data information systems, which is the CMIS. Unfortunately, the CMIS has data that are for enrollment for schools and infrastructure, but I think our challenge is it doesn't capture risk information and so forth. And as you can see on the screen, we have a NEF. So the NEF is a National Education Resilience Framework. This is a concept that is still in discussion, is still planned So once the National Education Resilience Framework is set up, we want to see this as a guiding framework that guides interventions for our partners and us going into this space, so that they are around CCA space. And we also have a discussion on an ENAP, it's Education National Adaptation Plan, which is a proposal that will be supported by UNICEF as well. So this is specifically for climate change and stuff. So school planning, currently we have a manual. So most will be familiar with the school-based disaster risk reduction handbook, so SBDRR. We are fortunate enough to review this handbook, and currently we have it as the school-based disaster and climate resilience handbook. So this handbook guides our schools to develop plans. Thank you. Next slide, please. Also for tropical cyclone Maila, as you can see, as of the 8th of this month, our emergency operations center has been operating for the last 30 days. We've scaled down all the operations on 8th of May, 8th of May. And then now we are just, it's a one-man coordination that we're doing it with the early recovery for the schools. So impacts, we have 80, actually now as of date, it's 84 schools. As per this 81 schools, we have additional 3 schools that are recorded in the impacted schools. We have 16 in major categories. So when we say major, is schools that are totally destroyed, with classrooms that the schools cannot be able to continue with classes. And then we have 31 schools on the moderate category and 34 on the minor ones. So these schools have ended impacts on winds, some storm surge, so the coastal flooding for most of the schools in the coastal areas, which filled with debris. So some of our colleagues who are in this webinar as well can verify that. With some of them I see are currently on the field. So response support, as I've mentioned earlier, we have support from the FAT, MFAT, UNICEF, and other partners as well. So I don't know what this 4th point might, but hopefully we can be able to get the support from this update through this platform, I guess. So most of our responses have scaled down. We are going into early recovery now. So we're setting up temporary learning spaces for most of the schools that are in the red category. So some items have already been delivered to Choiseul province. Some are just been dispatched during the weekend. The ship have just left today to the provinces. So by next week, the items arrive at Gizo, and then our team on the ground will be able to dispatch this to the schools. So we are anticipating in the next 2 to 3 weeks, some of the schools will be up and running. Next, please.
Yeah, that was the last slide.
So I think that's the last one. Hopefully I made sense on some of this. But if you have questions, you can be able to ask my boss here. We are here to answer your questions. But I think basically that's made in a nutshell regarding the TC Milo operations and some of our activities. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you very much for stepping in at short notice and helping us understand the picture there. I mean, I have one question for you. You mentioned red category and also that 81 schools were badly affected. My question is, given the severity of the cyclone, was that in line with what the ministry was expecting, or was it, was there anything surprising about, I know Solomon Islands experiences many cyclones. Was there anything surprising about the nature of the damages to the school, or was it by and large as expected? That you understood that those schools were in cyclone prone areas, or were due for upgrades to strengthen, or not? I guess that's my question.
Thank you very much. I think I cannot speak for people on the ground, but based on the experience and past experience and stuff, I think we anticipated this to happen, but not on this scale. This scale is too much. But based on our history, we're on a cyclone prone area, so we anticipated something like this, but on not on this scale. So it's kind of, I think some partners have all that we coordinated with them for support. They also stress their the same thing. They're not prepared for this magnitude. Yeah, so I think it's same for us. But as I mentioned, I cannot speak for the people on the ground. But from how I experience it, we did not expect this scale. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. Now, Lorima, you still have your hand up. That's Lorima Tuke at Save the Children. Hand down. Fantastic. Okay, well, fantastic to get some updates from Solomon Islands, and we wish you all the best with the continuing response. We're also joined by Mr. Finiaso Tahulu, who is the Director of Education at the Ministry of Education in Tuvalu. And as we know, moving on to another coral atoll situation, Finiaso is going to be able to talk us through some of the challenges, also some of the responses. We had a question before on building seawalls, or having an engineered solution, and I think that is also a relevant question, and one of the options available in Tuvalu that has already been implemented at great cost and is under consideration for other places. So I'll hand it over to Finiaso, and please, if you could share with us some of your insights from Tuvalu. Sorry, Finiaso, I can see your lips are moving, but you are still on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Timothy. My apologies. Talofa, everyone, and warm greetings from Tuvalu. Thank to the two previous speakers for sharing their insights and most importantly, their unique experiences they face in their unique countries. Just like RMI and the Solomon Islands, I thank you to the SESI Pacific Help Desk, GBPN, and the Save the Children for this opportunity to share Tuvalu's experience. Today, I will briefly reflect on the practical realities we faced in managing school infrastructure under the increasing pressure from the sea level rise, the coastal flooding, water insecurity, and land constraints. Our experience shows that infrastructure decisions are no longer only construction decisions. They are education, well-being, and financial and national survival decisions nowadays. I'm presenting most of the information from the school that you've seen is a faith-based school. We have only 2 secondary schools in Tuvalu. One, the biggest one, is on the outer island, which is the biggest island in Tuvalu, Maitupu. But that one is on the capital, the main island. and you can see both sides of the school is surrounded by the sea, by the lagoon and the ocean side. So that shows they are very exposed to salt spray, water security, and limited land area affecting the school planning as well. Can we move to the other slide, please? Team, next slide, please. Well, in Tuvalu, schools infrastructure has become one of the ministry's highest priorities. Many of our schools buildings are aging and exposed to harsh coastal conditions, including salt spray, erosion, flooding, and water shortage. At the same time, available land is extremely limited. So expanding or relocating the school is a very difficult. It's very difficult for us to relocate because of land difficulties. We prefer to have this school remain in this same location. If we shift the school to another area, it will have the same experience exposing to both side, the ocean side and the lagoon side. But when it comes to cyclone time, the location of this school at the moment is a bit safer compared to other locations. So the only risk that we're facing, we're expecting from that location is sea level rise. So we are finding ways and mitigations how to mitigating way to save this school, either elevating the land area in that school and build double stories buildings within the school. You can see that the previous slide, those are the old building built in the 90s. And that local traditional house classroom were built in the beginning of the year last year. The sad thing that this kind of materials will not last for more than 5 years. So in 5 years' time, we're going to put down those roofs and replace with the new ones. And they were built by communities, church communities. They volunteer and they donated all these materials and the labor to build these 12 classrooms, local classrooms. In addition to that, there is a risk of fire. They're very close. And once there is a fire hit there, all the 12 classrooms will be gone in a minute.
So
because of this,
I can see with the slides here, we're showing these locally built structures, but what the slide doesn't show is that there, as you're saying, there's an existing school from 1990, which is nearby, and that's the one that's currently in poor condition. So these classrooms, as you're saying, these have been built as a temporary measure. I can see how it might be confusing because we don't have that picture of the older school, which is located nearby. But I understand that this is an interim measure. It looks fantastic. Fantastic to see the use of the vernacular materials, but as you're saying, it's an interim measure, and whilst considerations are made for what to do with the permanent building that's in bad repair next to it, obviously affected by perhaps the substandard concrete and that continual salt exposure. So just wanted to clarify that's not the 1990 structure we're looking at. But thank you.
These buildings, these local classrooms were built last year. They are new buildings. But the concrete buildings that showed in the first slide, that's the first one that was built in 1990. But this classroom, many students have been shifted to this classroom because that classroom is not safe anymore. Because of these challenges, the ministry is strengthening its internal infrastructure capacity, including bringing architectural support to help improve planning and decision making. Today, infrastructure planning must consider not only construction costs, but also student well-being, climate resilience, education access, and long-term sustainability. For Tuvalu in particular, this school is a very important school in Tuvalu because it provides families with an alternative pathway for secondary education. The main secondary school student will sit the exams in year 8. Those who successfully achieve the satisfactory benchmark, we will send them to the main school, the biggest boarding secondary school on the outer island, Vaitupu. And those who didn't make it, the church decided to establish this school just to cater those who cannot make it. So, as I mentioned earlier, it provides families with an alternative pathway for secondary education, but they're doing well at the moment. However, the school was built in 1990, and as I mentioned earlier, and much in the infrastructure is aging and exposed to cultural risk. The major question now is whether to repair or rebuild, raise the land level, or buildings, or eventually relocate the school. But relocating the school is not an option at the moment because of those other land issues that I've shared with you. Because Funafuti, we have land, the land is limited, ownership arrangements are sensitive, and moving schools involves social and cultural and financial implication as well. This means infrastructure decisions require careful balancing between safety, affordability, land availability, and the continued access to education. In Tuvalu, infrastructure challenges are closely linked to water security, health, and students' participations. For example, in Vaitupu, water shortage directly affects students' daily well-being, especially our girls. They use well water for everything, like bathing in the bathroom, or toilets, and washing. The only fresh water we save fresh water for drinking and cooking. And I can recall that my daughter, when she was in the school, when I was a deputy principal in that school in 2019, my wife came and asked, maybe we have to send our daughter to Fiji for to attend school in Fiji. Unfortunately, I refused. That I'm looking after the school, and I can't do that. I think everyone understands what the reason behind it. Because her hair started falling because they used those washing detergents, the Boom powder soap. When they use the ordinary soap, it's not really that good, satisfactory to them. So they decided to use those kind of soap with the water because the salinity of level of the water is quite high. So that's why we propose to the WASH organization, UNICEF, if they could assist us in improving the water catchment and water storage, rainwater storage, just for our girls to get improve the hygienic level and the health around them. We know that when it comes to their period time, they need fresh water, especially the girls. Menstrual hygiene management is also needed in our girls, and we are working towards it. Not only we are relying on assistance, but we are trying to save some money from our budget so that we can assist the school. Now, that's 2019. I moved into the ministry just last year, and I brought with me the experience from the boarding school and the issues that we face in school. So now I'm sitting on the director's table. I'm trying to maneuver around our budget and also to address that the very practical realities happening in schools. Now I move into the main island, and I went around and I saw the school, this faith-based school, where we provide more than 98% of the operation costs to support the school, even though it's owned by the church. But we believe that these children are Tuvaluan children. We must support these students. It's our responsibility to support these students. One important lesson from Tuvalu is that the future infrastructure planning must be practical and adapted to our island realities. We need solutions that respond to climate risk, land security, and the need to maintain education access close to community. There is also value in developing reusable and approved school designs that can improve quality, consistency, and resilience across the system. At the same time, reclaimed land may become part of future education planning where existing school sites are no longer sustainable. Lastly, thank you very much for listening. I look forward to learning from the experiences of other Pacific Island countries and to discussing practical solutions that can strengthen the climate resilience education system across our region. Faftai team.
Thank you very much, Phineas. It's I look forward to the opportunity at some stage, but it definitely sounds like a challenging environment when the anecdote you were telling there about young girls washing with the salty water is a daily situation. So that picture that we're seeing at the moment, it might be worth touching on. That's the TCAP project, is that right?
Yeah, that's the TCAP project.
Okay, and that includes a school or two within that area, or
no.
Okay.
They went the recent one. They are reclaiming the recent reclamation. It covers the biggest primary school in Tuvalu, which has 900 plus students in that primary school. So it covers that primary school, but not this secondary school. It's far away further to the end of the island.
I'm wondering if there's any questions from our audience, either to Finiaso or our other speakers, Laurie from Solomon Islands or Natalie from RMI. Please turn your microphones on and jump in with a question. Maybe introduce yourself so we know where you're coming from as well. There was an earlier question in the chat from Richard. He was asking about digital schooling, whether that's an option. And I'm not sure if he was meaning year-round or just in the situations where their schools are not open, they've been affected or damaged, and whether children can stay home. And I think this probably wasn't an option a few years ago, but now with the prevalence of better comms from Starlink and similar, it's opening up as an option not to assist with the flooding, but it might appreciate in terms of minimising the gaps in education. Is that something which has been considered in Tuvalu or Solomon Islands or in Marshall Islands?
Thank
I
you.
can talk about this. Oh, go ahead. You go first and I'll go second.
Thank you. Thank you, Timothy. Yes, last year we have installed all Starlink high performance kit in all our schools, preschools up to secondary schools, with the notion of getting them prepared and access to materials when we face climate effective climate surges and impacts in the future. So we might rely on those internet connections or to deliver so we can continue delivering our lessons. Not only that, it's very expensive to bring all the teachers here. Not only that, with the cost of money, but it will affect teaching period of the learning period of our students in the outer island. So using those internet kits will help us deliver online trainings for continuous professional development and other relevant activities that we want to share with them. Thanks.
We're a little bit behind Tuvalu in this area, but we have a Global Partnership for Education transformation grant to bring Starlink to all of our neighboring islands. So we're working on it, but it takes time because we have to first put in the solar power before we can put in the Starlink, and the solar power batteries can't be transported by airplane. So we're working on getting them out via ships. But once that happens, then we do have some plans for online learning. We have it as a part of our education sector plan to make it possible for students to be able to stay on their home islands for secondary education, which right now the vast majority of our atolls, students have to go away to boarding school for secondary. And we've already rolled out some online learning at our secondary schools. Our Starlinks and solar were funded through a World Bank project. About little over a year ago, we finally got all of them connected, and they're using a program called IXL, the 3 letters, but it sounds like I excel, like I'm doing well. And that program has they're AI translations, so they're not perfect, but they're pretty good. They have AI translations in Marshallese language for science, social studies, and math. And then the English program, of course, does not have the translations because the idea is to have the students using English. But that program has been really useful for us at the high school level. And our students are reporting that they feel like they're really learning because it's tailored to their individual pace, which has been very helpful because a lot of our students come from these various elementary schools to a boarding school where they come from a wide range of quality education opportunities before they arrive at boarding school. So some of them have to really catch up, and this online system has been helpful for some of them to do that. For context, it was only about 2 years ago that all of our 8th grade graduates could go to high school before they had to go into a bridge program if they didn't pass a test. And then if they didn't pass out of the bridge program, they would never really go into full secondary school. But we eliminated that testing barrier. So now all students come to high school, which has also sort of further stretched out the wide range of achievement levels and language proficiency levels. So this kind of online learning has really helped our teachers to respond to the differentiated learning needs.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Yeah, I mean, I also read your comment there in the chat about the temporary solution in Tuvalu. It's an interesting point, isn't it? That what is the role for we know often post-disaster there's the rollout of tents which serve as emergency education spaces. I guess the example there in Tuvalu with the transitional space perhaps is a better word for it because it's seeking to provide a solution whilst other more permanent solutions are being tackled. I wonder if there's other people on the call here who can talk to the role there of transitional solutions. You know, it's very hard to go from a building that is unusable due to a recent disaster to a permanent solution straight away. So there is the idea sometimes that it has to be a step solution. It'd be interesting to hear from the group. I know we've got a wide range of guests here from around the region and from different organisations. if that's something that they might be able to speak to. Perhaps in the chat or put your hand up.
There's a question in the chat from Dr. Tepora. It says if the panelists could share their reflections on how students maintain their interest and motivation for learning in such challenging circumstances, as well as for teachers.
Yeah, do you want to have first crack at that, Phineas? So I know you touched on some of the challenges for the students, including your own daughter there. And I believe, Natalie, you may have shared a link on another discussion with us about the effect of climate on school attendance. I'm not sure if you've had time to digest that study, but first to Finiaso, and then I'll hand over to Natalie to make a comment there about maintaining motivation for learning in these in challenging environments. And you're on mute again.
Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Dr. Tepora. Yeah, in small island countries like Tuvalu, it is the motivation there for the community to sending their kids to school is very strong. Not 100%, but it's more than 90%. I believe it's just an estimate. But even in difficult conditions, whether it is flooding, water shortage, damaged classrooms, we really work together with our principals in school and teachers to ensure that we continue running the school because under the Act, the only person who can cancel give the authority, authorize the cancellation of school is the Minister of Education. So that's why I mentioned earlier, we work together with our principal. They will report to us the status of their school, the conditions of their school. Then we might decide on what needs to be done. And also considering, we consider that how can we continue the education for our children during those events. At the same time, we must also recognize that resilience also is not enough. Motivation can decline if infrastructure conditions continue to worsen. That is why improving school environment, water security, sanitation, safety, and teacher support system is not only an infrastructure issue, but it is also essential for protecting learning quality, student well-being, and teacher morale as well. So far for us, climate resilience school infrastructure is ultimately about sustaining hope, dignity, and continuity of education for both students and teachers. I hope, Deborah, I'm responding to your question. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, so the study that Tim was referencing was done, they were looking at learning loss during COVID, and we basically never closed for COVID. And so I asked the researchers to look at how coastal inundations might connect with learning loss and the impact on student learning. And in that report, they weren't able to collect survey data from the principals on how many days they closed, because those researchers have the same problem we do in terms of getting information because of the lack of digital connectivity and an easy way to collect data. So what they did was they compared all of our schools from their altitude, so the number of feet above sea level, and they did find a correlation between, for every meter above sea level, students scored an average of 1.4 additional points on the PILNA test. So those schools that are at slightly higher elevation have higher scores on the PILNA than those schools at lower elevation. And we were kind of using that measure as a proxy for coastal inundation, because those, of course, that are nearer, that are nearer to sea level would have more coastal flooding. And that study just came out to us about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago. And I think it's really interesting. 1.4 points isn't a lot on the PILNA. Some of you in the region know that, but they kind of look at every 2 points equals 1 month of schooling. So this equates to roughly maybe 3 weeks of missed schooling, 2 or 3 weeks of missed schooling per year, just based on the elevation of the school. So that's something for us to be thinking about as we're planning for the future, that not only does this have an impact on safety, but it also has an impact on student learning. So that's one thing that we consider. But I want to go to Tapora's question about how students maintain their interest and motivation for learning under these challenging circumstances, and teachers for teaching. And I think that's hard. You know, I wish I could say that we had this magically solved. But I think one way that we keep students motivated is the introduction of relevant knowledge in their curriculum. So right now we're updating our science curriculum with more climate change content. We've already had climate change content from grade 7 and up, but we're adding more of it and making it more relevant to the Marshall Islands specifically. And in kindergarten to grade 6, we are also now incorporating climate change intentionally. And things like the climate change debate that I mentioned earlier, you know, they practice for that debate, they prepare for that in their English language class. And so having these topics that affect their their daily lives, and having the opportunity to talk about them in their classes, I think is really helpful. And that does engage some students. Of course, some students not, but that's the reality for any classroom. We all know that as teachers, but having that really relevant education does help. And I think more climate change content, which I believe is a part of the SESI program, can help with that, to give students after a disaster or after a inundation or flooding event, it helps them to process that information. I think it helps on a social emotional level, but it also helps on an academic rigor level. You know, if they're learning about something that is impacting their daily life in this way, they're more likely to pay attention, you know, get off their phone, whatever it is. You know, these are teenagers in many cases. So I think that's something we're really trying to help our teachers with. And you asked, how do you keep teachers involved? And we have tried really hard to give some hands-on experiences for teachers. Like, for example, the National Geographic Pristine Seas program was here, and we took our teachers, we worked with them to get science teachers on board, and they went for a 4-day scientific research cruise to one of our neighboring atolls. And for those teachers, it felt really good to be invested in as professionals, that we would allow them the time off of school so that they could go improve their scientific knowledge. So I think investing in the professional growth of teachers helps them in these processes, so that when they go back to their classroom, they're more motivated to teach. Those are just some of our ideas. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie. I'm looking through the comments there, and I can see John, but I see you've shared, Fakos, and that is a link to the interactive global map there for visualizing coastal risk screening tool. Now I'm currently loading it up on my screen, and I'm having a look at Tonga, for example, and I can see, I can probably share my screen, but I'm wondering if that is something that you've been using in your work. So this was a link that John has shared, and I've opened that up now to illustrate. I'm not overly familiar with it. I'm sure some others have used it, but John, if you're there or others would like to talk to this or other mapping tools that might be useful for doing the assessments of if we have a ministry that's looking at trying to understand the risk. Obviously, they need the GPS locations of schools assist, and then by combining it with existing flood mapping that starts to provide an indication of the nature of the hazards at different locations. Yeah, John or anybody else are there other tools like this that you would recommend? I think I keep doing shout outs to people who are late to join or early to leave. Look, the other thing that might be worth sharing, and let me bring it up for you, is I have a small video here which helps explains the help desk. So it runs for 1 minute. But whilst you think of your next question, we can also start to wrap this up. So if you have last questions, please get ready to put your hand up and put them in the chat. I'll play this video. It goes for 1 minute. And then there's also a very quick survey that we'd appreciate you to do. As we mentioned, this is the second in 3 planned webinars. And obviously, if you can provide a short amount of feedback, that will help us in planning for the next one. Let me play the video here, which provides a explanation of the help desk associated with the SESI initiative.
Might need to share the audio, Tim.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Introducing the Pacific Climate Smart School Buildings Help Desk. The Pacific Help Desk offers remote technical support to ministries of education. When a request comes into the help desk, our team connects your question with the right experts who provide tailored, practical responses based on local context and best practices. The help desk prepares the resource material and shares it with the Ministry of Education for feedback. The request is then closed. The advice given is documented and made available on knowledge sharing.
Anais.
Yes, hello team.
Please.
Sorry, it seems my internet is breaking up a bit. Can you hear me properly? Can you hear me? Or is
Yes.
it time? Okay, yeah, Tim has. Oh,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, all right. It seems all good. All right, sorry, I take this opportunity to jump in. Thank you, team, and I jumped in late, so apologies from my end. But I just wanted to say on behalf of SPC, the Pacific community, because you were showing the maps earlier on, and because I heard also some conversation around the issue of temperature and heat waves and how that would impact learning environment. So I just wanted to say that understanding the risks and the different hazards for our member countries is really something that we do a lot of at SPC. Obviously, there's been, you mentioned to the TCAP project, and this kind of adaptation projects where we understand and forecast sea level rise, for example, and inundation, coastal inundation modeling has been something that we've done. So it requires the adequate data to do this kind of job. So, for example, at the moment, there has been conversation to put together a regional action plans to acquire LiDAR data, which will give the proper elevation of those atoll islands to understand and be able to do proper and very accurate modeling and understand specifically coastal inundation and futures sea level rise scenarios as well. And on the heat waves, or the challenge around temperature, there's been an acknowledgement that at the regional level there is no specific definition, and sometimes it's under considered. We're working with Met offices to try and see also the connection with ocean temperatures, and I've got my colleagues from the ocean on the call here, but trying to understand the nexus and trying to understand also when we call it a heat wave and when we have to take the adequate actions towards what would be an ongoing heat waves, and when it impacts different sectors, whether it's the health, the education, the agriculture, etc. So acknowledging this is a bit of an empty space, which we're raising awareness on as well from the angle that we work in at SPC, and hopefully this will be coming up to something more concrete in the months to come. So yeah, just mentioning this. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Anais. What's the best way that we can stay in touch on those initiatives?
So I don't know how. I know, I think sometimes each country has a bit of their ways through different projects to contact SPC or to be in touch with SPC, right? So RMIs, they've been liaising with our planning team, for example, and I think that our ongoing conversation on those matters. For Tuvalu, our team is very well involved, the ocean team is very well involved with Met and NDMOs, and I don't know how much that goes all the way to education, but I would say, I would say to reach out to the geoscience division, or else if it's to contact SPC, or usually foreign affairs in each and individual country would have the entry points to SPC if it's something that you haven't been doing in the past, as in engaging with SPC from your sector, which I'd be surprised in. But if you don't have an SPC contact, foreign affairs is definitely at the country level an entry point. Otherwise, your sectoral focal point would be helpful to liaise you with any other SPC division.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you very much. And as I'm sure most people here will have, already existing relationships there, and it's a work in progress. But to have the regional LiDAR mapping information available, I think would be for ministries who are seeking to undertake countrywide assessments of the schools, to, as we hear from RMI, to get that more informed picture of the nature of the hazards and the existing conditions at the various schools. I'm sharing here the link to the webinar survey. I think I'm not sure if you can click on that link. Doubtful, but if you can pull out your phone, take a photo there, or John has just posted it in the chat. If you could take a couple of minutes either now or at the conclusion and answer a couple of short questions there, that would be very much appreciated. And with that being said, I might hand back over to John to do the thank yous and wrap things up. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, I think just to wrap things up, we will be sharing the report from this webinar shortly, and the recording will be also shared for those who joined late, want to look at the webinar from the beginning. We will share the recording from this webinar. And it will be shared through the Wakamoana Learning Hub, because that's where we want to engage and ensure stakeholders and ministries of education can access through that platform. So once again, we would like to really acknowledge and thank our speakers today, Dr. Natalie, Lore Wale, and Director Fineaso from the Tuvalu Ministries of Education. Thank you so much for the insights, for the reflections and experiences that you share in the webinar. It's been really insightful, and I hope all the participants learned a lot during this webinar. Thank you so much for sharing your challenges, your experiences and reflections on the work that you are doing, and we will continue to highlight some of these experiences in other platforms as much as possible, and we encourage countries to engage with your colleagues in these ministries if you need any further information, and also to connect with them as well. Also acknowledging and appreciating everyone's time as well to reach until this end. We really appreciate your time, and hopeful that you can also join us in the upcoming webinars as well. And thank you, Tim, for leading us throughout the discussion. We appreciate the preparations gone into this webinar. Yeah, I'll probably start blubbering now, so I'll stop and say tagia tu mas loifala everyone, and hope to see you soon in the next webinar. Good fall afternoon.
Thanks, John. Thank you all.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.